Hi there, my name is Dr. William Bird. I'm a GP and welcome to this first chat with a GP. And this is about those issues and topics that have come up where you hear loads of hype, real worries, scare stories, and then actually, as you read, it all gets a little bit calming down, and then actually people say you don't need to worry about it too much. But then it all comes back up again with something different, and it's so confusing to try and keep abreast of all these different subjects coming through. Now, some of you may remember me when I was on BBC Breakfast, and I remember at 6:30 in the morning having to deal with all these different conflicts coming through from COVID, and it was a real problem trying to decipher it, sort it out, find out what the hype was and what the reality was. And this is exactly what we're going to do. And our very first session is going to be on ultra-processed food. So let's start and by understanding a little bit about this, and I really do hope that by the end of the 10 minutes, you'll be a little bit clearer about what ultra-processed food is and why it's a problem. So what it is, well, nobody quite has a definition. There are lots of definitions out there, but most of them all come back to pretty much the same thing. And that is that it's ingredients that you wouldn't find in your kitchen. Your granny wouldn't know about them, okay? Some people say more than 5 ingredients is often a good sign of ultra-processed food, but certainly the one thing is that the chemicals used are not things you find in your kitchen. They're on an industrial process, and a lot of them are just chemicals that have never ever seen food before. So the food is perhaps something which is not quite accurate. And in fact, one of the best definitions I've seen or comments on it is most ultra-processed food is not food, it is on industrial it's an industrially produced edible substance. Wow, an edible substance. That really kind of just defines the stuff we're putting in our mouth without really thinking about it. Now, there have been attempts to try and categorize food so that you know which ones are good and which ones are bad. And the NOVA categorization, which has been around for some time now, started in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. United Nations are now taking it on, and you'll hear about it in articles or media when you're just hearing about ultra-processed food. So Nova 1 is unprocessed food. That's the stuff which is pretty fresh. You get it as a vegetable or as a fruit or as a piece of meat or something which is there, and you recognize this very much as food. The second category are the ingredients, and these are things like oils or honey or butter or cheese. Salt even is in there, and they've been processed a little bit in order to come, they've been pressed or they've been extracted, but in general they are pretty much food, and they're used as the ingredients. The third group are processed foods, but these are foods that are still pretty much recognizable as food, and they've been canned or processed to just become a bit more preserved, but they don't have lots of chemicals in them at all. That's reserved for the fourth group, Nova 4, which is the ultra-processed foods. This is where you have chemicals, loads of ingredients, and they are designed to have long shelf lives and other things. And that's why ultra-processed food was developed. It's absolutely escalated since the 1960s, the 1970s. Number one, it's cheap, so you sell more. Number two, it's got a long half-life. And this is extraordinary, because I came across this bit about a few weeks ago, and I bought some of this vegetarian ice cream, and I went to work, and I thought we had a freezer top, on a fridge with a little box at the top now, which is a bit old-fashioned. But anyway, it wasn't. It was just a fridge. So I put it in there and thought, right, as soon as I get home after work, I'm going to put it in the freezer, and hopefully it won't be a complete mess. I completely forgot and came back the next week. So it had been living in this fridge at 5 to 6 degrees for a whole week. And when I opened it, it was still solid. It was completely solid. I took a bit and it just was exactly the same as if it would have been frozen. And of course, what they've done is they've made it so that it doesn't thaw and then freeze. It actually doesn't get those ice crystals that make it all kind of crunchy if you do freeze it by mistake and then thaw it and then freeze it again. So this is where you get this long shelf life, and it's quick to prepare. And interestingly, there was a study done, and it was on twins, and the twins had an obesity gene. Now that doesn't always get expressed. Not all our genes get expressed, But when they followed the twins up, those who went into a low-income household had that gene expressed a lot more than those who went into a more affluent household. And of course, the one difference is low-income households have more stress, yes, but they also eat a lot more ultra-processed food because it's cheap. 1 million people don't have a fridge, so you can store it better. 3 million people don't have a cooker, so it's quick to prepare. So this is really a problem where you get into poverty, where ultra-processed food is a really good solution if you want food and the kids love it as well. But the final thing of why it was developed is because it's been designed to have more. It's been designed so that you want to eat more and more and more. 60% of all our calories in the UK now come from ultra-processed food, which I think is a pretty horrendous fact to kind of try and get your head around when you think how different that was just in the 1950s or 60s. So let's take an ultra-processed food of this drink, okay? It's got about 6 to 8 teaspoons of sugar in it. If that was warm and flat and you drank it, it would be absolutely horrible, sickly. But make it fizzy, make it cold, add some phosphoric acid and caffeine to make it bitter and things, and you can get that sugar past you without it ever feeling like it's about 6 to 8 teaspoons of sugar. But when you get all that sugar into you straight away, it immediately gives you that buzz and you want more because you don't feel that you've taken all that sugar in. And this is how it's all designed, is to make you drink or eat more of this stuff. Now, let's have a quick look at this and just see if we can make sense of all of this. So this is a study that was done, and it just kind of epitomizes, it makes you kind of realize how it all works. 20 men and women were given Nova 1 to a bit of Nova 2 and 3, but mostly it was a healthy stuff, not the UPF. And they lived in a controlled environment for 2 weeks, but they were allowed to eat as much as they wanted. After 2 weeks, they were given 80% of a Nova 4, the ultra-processed food, and exactly the same amount of salt, sugar, carbs, protein and fat than the Nova 1 and 2, which they'd had the previous 3 weeks. And again, they were allowed to eat as much as they wanted. At the end of the study, they were eating 500 more calories per day with the ultra-processed food than they were with the Nova 1 and the healthy food. They actually put on 2 kilograms of weight, and they actually lost weight in the unprocessed food. So you can see how even when that food is kind of matched, people want to eat more. It's designed. That's exactly how it's been designed. Look at these 2 pizzas, one homemade, one ultra-processed. Same sugar, fat, everything else in there very often. But it's softer and it's got chemicals and it's got an ability to be absorbed much more quickly. So by the end of that ultra-processed pizza, you don't feel full. You don't actually feel good at all. But the homemade pizza, where you've been crunching away at it and you've been chewing and chewing and chewing, you will feel very satisfied at the end of it and you won't want any more. So this is how it works. It's just that difference between the two. Again, let's just look at this one, because here you've got those Pringles, which we all love them, and you eat them and you want to carry on. Even their slogan, which is now changed, was once you pop, you can't stop. What happens, you've got a shape which is actually of your tongue, and you get full blast of all those sensations coming through immediately. But it gets absorbed so quickly because it's soft. It doesn't, your body, your gut, the end of the gut, which determines how full you are, doesn't get a look in. So it says, no, carry on eating because we're not full yet. But it never gets there, never gets to that part of the gut. And in fact, that soft food that we're seeing, which is so characteristic of ultra-processed food, is meaning our jaws are becoming smaller because the muscles are not needed so much. So impacted wisdom teeth are becoming more important. And with all of this going on in the design that they've done, it's actually got 9 criteria of an addiction. So we are talking about something which is, for some ultra-processed foods, not saying this, but some ultra-processed foods, you really do get a craving and want to carry on with it. Now, the legacy of ultra-processed food is that you get this inflammation And this chronic inflammation, because of the gut biome and the fact that we get a leaky gut, causes a lot of these conditions. So they come on later and later and later in life as you continue to pile up this food. So let's just go through the three main problems of ultra-processed food. Number one, it's replacing nutritious food with less nutritious food. So you're not getting the nutrition. Even when you add it after you've made the substances, you don't get that in a way that the body can sometimes absorb it very well. So even though on the package it might show you've got this, this, and this, and this, actually because they've been added and they've not been integrated into food itself, it may not be nutritious. So that's the number one thing, and that is causing a major problem right across the world. The second thing is, as we've heard, it increases obesity. It's absolutely brilliant at doing that, because not only does it cause the wanting to eat more and more of the calories, they're very dense. So you can very easily get a lot of calories in one bar. It hasn't got any water in it. Water is harder to kind of preserve. So they take the water out, meaning it's concentrated calories. So you don't have to eat very much volume to get the same number of calories. And you have to chew it and it's soft. So obesity is going up. And the final one is the processing itself provides chemicals like preservatives, emulsifiers, colouring, sweeteners, and these all in themselves have problems, and even the packaging on the outside have carcinogens as well that has been discovered. Now this is sulfuric acid being poured in here in preparation for food, because it's a brilliant way of preserving food, so makes you really think twice before you go for this. So let's have a look and just see what we can do. So the first thing is that just learn what a UPF food is and what it is. And there are two apps there. You just put it on the barcode when you go to the supermarket, and it will come up and tell you whether it's a UPF food, what the content is, and how healthy or not healthy it is. The second thing is, remember, you want to feel well. Okay, so just before you put your hand out to try and grab one of these substances, we can call them substances, food, just be aware that actually if you want more energy, you want to keep your weight down, you want to feel less tired, you want to have better sleep, just don't, because it won't do that. It might give you a bit of a high to start with, but it will not do any of those things later. The third thing is, be aware that these are designed to make you want to eat more and more. These are being manipulated. These aren't food. These are chemicals that have been designed to try and make you want to have more and more. Of course, we can have treats, etc. But just be aware that this is all been recreated to become moreish. And then finally, find alternative foods. You can start slowly by replacing some of those ultra-processed foods with better foods, and get better on that. And finally, books. Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Teleken, absolutely fantastic, tells you everything you need. Unprocess Your Life, a good cookery book, did my first one yesterday. And Tim Spector, Food for Life, he's a absolute god on this and has been working on this for so long. So those are three books I'd recommend if you really wanted to get a handle of all of this. And otherwise, I'd say thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I think we will then be talking about sweeteners and sugar. So 1:30 next Wednesday, and look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much indeed.